after Cyril K. Brennan, former mayor, who needs no monument for those of us who knew him to remember his achievements during his long term of office. The citizens of Attleboro are most fortunate to have had all the former mayors and our present mayor, Judith Robbins, who will also be remembered for their many improvements to the city during their terms of office. The citizens of Attleboro are indeed fortunate to have elected the right candidate for the office at the right time to have developed the city and served them well. From the first mayor, Harold E. Sweet, who took his office in 1914, 2 years before Albert Town Crier made his first call. We are also fortunate, indeed, to have Attleboro's own Wally Cryan here tonight, acting as master of ceremonies. Go on with the show.
We just want to take a few minutes to line up the mayors so we can get a group photo before we start. Thank you.
Wow, God, get the mayor's
I can move this.
No, I don't.
Everyone settled in? Can everyone hear me out there?
Yeah.
That's it. I want to welcome all of you here this evening. My name is Don Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Attleboro Instant Revitalization. I'm also the co-chair, along with Jan Hansen, of the Attleboro Millennium Committee, which has been sponsoring a number of events throughout the year. This happens to be one of them. This event has been organized by the Friends of Attleboro History, chaired by Sue Flood and Joan Pilkington Smith, and their advisory board. They have been doing a remarkable and thorough job of opening our eyes to our great city's rich and wonderful past. Tonight, the work of this committee continues with what I'm sure will be a wonderful learning experience for all of us. We are pleased and honored to be in the midst of such a distinguished panel of guests. We are also very pleased that Walter Cryan has agreed to moderate the discussion tonight. Walter, the retired news anchor of WPRI-TV Channel 12 in Providence, raised the standard for local television news coverage during his illustrious 35-year career with the TV station. The tenure of the longtime newsman, who retired in early March, has spanned 7 U.S. presidents and a number of mayors. A 1956 graduate of Boston University, Walter began his broadcast career in 1952. For 13 years, he broadcast news and sports for 3 radio outlets: the American Forces Network in Europe, WBUR at Boston University, which is one of my favorite stations, and WARA in Attleboro, which we all remember. He hosted, well, I didn't mean it. He hosted the Meeting Street Telethon for 22 years. A member of the Board of Trustees at the Meeting Street Center, a school for special needs students in East Providence, Walter received the school's Unsung Hero Award in 1994. He was also inducted into the Silver Circle by the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences in 1996, and he was named a Boston University Distinguished Alumni Award winner earlier this year. I cannot think of a better person to moderate tonight's event. So without further delay, please sit back and enjoy the program as I present to you Mr. Walter Cryan.
Thank you, Don, thank you. I can't understand why I get a better introduction than the mayors do, but I'll try to do the best I can for you, ladies and gentlemen, as we go through this. The first thing I said out in the hallway when we were preparing for this, every single one of these people has been in a debate format over the years, and you get locked into a debate format. And we're going into a discussion format tonight, so it's very, very important for us to stay in that discussion format throughout. With that in mind, and the time limits and the constraints we have for time, I've said to everybody, we're going to try and limit answers as much as we can to 2 minutes. We really want to pick some brains here. We want to get down to the nitty-gritty of what you were faced with, what you had to do, how you feel about what you accomplished, and the times that you were here. That's important, and I think it's important to everybody because of the fact that you were here during important times in the development of this city over the years. Now, we're going to start by introducing the first mayor we have here who is with us, and Lord, I'm so happy, John, that you could be here. John W. McIntyre, who was the 8th mayor of the city of Attleboro. He served from 1939 to 1942. The 11th mayor of the city was Thomas A. Piggott. He served from 1966 to 1971. Our next mayor, Raymond Macumber, was the 12th mayor of the city. He served from 1972 to 1977. And Gerald J. Keene, who was the 13th mayor of the city, served from 1978, I remember it well, to 1983. And although she was the 14th mayor for the city of Attleboro, Brenda Reed was the first woman mayor. She served from 1984 to 1985. And our 16th mayor, Judith H. Robbins, 1992, and still serving. And as you heard, I'm Walter Cryan, Attleboro taxpayer in 1963 to the present. We will begin, we have a series of questions, and all of our mayors have seen these questions beforehand. So they have an idea as to what we're seeking. And I say seeking because it's not an easy thing to do, to go back. A couple of them said, are you testing my memory on this whole thing? And I said, in a lot of cases, I test my own every day. But I will say this, we are trying to get to as much as we can about what happened to you individually, what the things that puzzled you at the time, things that you had to deal with. And it's those kind of things that are important to us. Now, we go back and begin with Mayor McIntyre. The mayor was saying to me that he was on the city council serving during the Depression at that time, John. And that in itself brings a story. So if you could go back that far with us and just give us some ideas. You went from the council and then became mayor. Give us some idea of those times for us.
Could you get this?
What is this? Well, I'm very pleased to be invited to participate in this event. And I think that the committee has done a mighty job to have people pay some attention to our history. And it occurred to me, and I talked with Sue Flood about it, that I'm probably the eldest here. That's about the only distinction that I have left. And I go back quite a long ways, but my participation in the city government was in 1932. But I have a question to ask you folks. Do any of you folks remember where the town hall was before North Attleboro broke away from East Attleboro? Well, if you go up West Street, the first street on your right is Clifton Street. And at the corner of Clifton Street on your right hand, you'll see a little plaque. And it will say here was the town hall in Attleboro prior to North Attleboro leaving it. I remember the people who owned the land were very nice, and I bought the area for $25. And John Anderson, the park fellow, took care of planting the flowers there. Now, at the time that I first entered the city government, it was a little bit unusual. I had, the Depression started theoretically in 1929, and I finished college in 1930, so I knew that the Depression was on. And I used to, when I went in on the train to Boston, $10.80 a month, by the way, I read a little book by Breed and Hosmer, and I took the examination to become a civil engineer and happened to pass it. And that was the reason I went to law school. I was sheltered during the years that I was in there. So I went to law school, and of course I went nights because I worked days. And it was 3 nights a week, 3 hours each night. And I got a little bit uneasy there because it just wasn't too much to excite me. I was #1 in the class and president and some other things. I was editor of the yearbook. But I couldn't, that didn't satisfy me. I was a lot brighter in those days. I used to come out to Attleboro, at least on weekends, help my mother in the little flower business we had. But I got walking around and I thought, well, look, here's the city council. And I went down Pleasant Street, which is Ward 4, and I took out the papers and I ran and I won by 11 votes. I was only about 24 years old. And the next year, Russ Brennan ran in Ward 5, and he was no older than I, and he won too. Well, that's only a preface.
All right, John, I'm going to hold you right there with that preface. I'm going to move on. You got a better memory than I have for sure. 92 years old, and you're calling these numbers up, John, you're scaring me over here. But anyway, we'll get back to you in a minute. That was a preface going into politics here, and we want to save some for you later. Now we're going to move on to Tom Pickett. As I mentioned earlier, Tom was a mayor, the 11th mayor of the city from 1966 to 1971. And Tom, you went into office under very unusual circumstances yourself.
Wally, you were the first person to interview me after I was elected.
I remember.
It was an exciting night that night. And it changed my whole life. Everything. I didn't even know what I was doing. It was an evaluation of the city. Everybody got mad. They called it the taxpayers uprising. I got a little notoriety out of it. But actually what I was doing was just doing what people asked me to do, to speak for them. So at any rate, I ran for the election and against one of the greatest guys in the world. I voted for him 14 times, for Cy Brennan. And it had to be me to come along, because you see, in society, the city is not static, it's dynamic. It moves all the time and it grows, whether we have any influence on it or not. It's a good thing we have some influence, especially now with expansion going on so heavily. But at any rate, I ran for the office and walked in on January 3rd, and I didn't even know anything about politics. I had been to college, I had done a lot of things in my life, I was in World War II, but when I looked at the desk and saw all the blueprints and all the directions, I had to read everything. I had to read the city manual from start to finish to find out how to proceed. And it was helpful when I had the council to help me. I had a council that was absolutely unique. We had guys like Lee Forget, who was the finance committee chairman. We had Charlie Smith and Arthur Hines and old timers who helped me. All I had to do was ask them, and we even had John Parker come in to help me put the first budget together. I soon learned, and it became a delightful job, primarily because of people. I learned out of this entire thing that there is a thing called people power. And when people go on committees, trusts, and committees, again, they get things done. And they did it. I didn't do it. The people did it. So I want to thank the committee for putting this group of people together. And I think they've done a splendid job. My wife is looking at me. I have to shut up for a second.
I have a built-in timer. I remember you admitting not knowing anything when you walked in that first interview you did. I remember you all set to go.
Yeah, I was set to go.
I'll tell you a quick aside about that too. That was the first interview that Tom Pickett had done as mayor. Only, I would say, probably 10 or 15 minutes before that, I had interviewed Cy Brennan. And Cy was coming down, his headquarters were over Pools Cab on Park Street. He was coming down that long stairway. WARA had sold election coverage time that night from 8 o'clock until midnight. This was roughly about 9:15 and 9:30. And I have a car out there, a radio car, which we can go on the air with. This was brand new at that time. You could go right on the air from this car. So he's coming down the stairs, and I see him, and I could tell he was really upset. I could tell he was teary. And I said, I had no idea that he had heard the numbers were so far against him. I said, Cy, how's everything going? What do you hear? You know? And he said, it's over, Wally. Now I put him right in the car, and I interviewed him right there. He broke down. A long career he had. He broke down. So I figured we did well here, right? We have Cy Brennan. We're going to go get this newcomer, Tom Pickett. Not bad at all. So I rushed back to the station, see what if they had taped it at all. I get back there, and the general manager finds out at 25 minutes of 10, and I already had both of them on, and he berates me for the rest of the night because it was sold till midnight. So I was in trouble, Tom, that night. You didn't even know about that. Let's move on to Ray Marcon. Ray was served as our 12th mayor from 1972 to 1977. Ray, take us back to that time.
Okay, I can probably go back just a little bit earlier, when I first went on the council. I was on the council for 6 years, and there was a problem up in Havenville with the Thompson chemical plant at the time. As an end result, I guess Charlie Smith and I were both surprised because I got elected to the council, and from there I went on, and when it come time to run for mayor, was at that time, I was a lineman with National Electric Company. In fact, I had to take a pay cut to become mayor. And, you know, I was the monkey on the stick, they said, as I come off the line. But as it turned out, the monkey on the stick turned things around too. And some of the things you were asking about, the key issues of the administration, so I'll go into that. The economy at that time, the country was in a national decline on economics, a recession practically in economics. So that was one of the main issues. I had to be a real tightwad, and I probably have suffered for it in many ways, but in other ways I was thanked. Very, very frugal with the budget. That was one of the problems. Taxes was another problem. And those are the main things that I was trying to hone in on at first.
Not a liberal spender,
Not really.
huh? Hold it down where you could.
Yes.
Well,
There was a time it had to be that way.
Absolutely.
But it's been known for years. It's something like going back to the Depression that John was talking about. There are times when you have to hold things down and do things that have to be done. And I think it wasn't me, it was the whole city, the council at the time, the school committee, and right down to the workers of the city. Everybody just seemed to be able to communicate together and get along and try to get some things done that they knew had to be done at that time.
I think you make a good point there, Ray, because, you know, a lot of people really do not understand. I was talking with Mayor Robbins about this earlier. People do not understand the time and effort that's put in, whether you're on the city council, or you're the mayor, or anybody.
If you're working, putting in potholes, it's the same thing. They're all in the,
Now we're
group,
getting
and they're the ones that do the work.
Absolutely. But people don't understand how much time is put in. When you're in politics, I mean, you're devoted to what you're doing, and the only thing you're trying to do is do the right thing. And it's a big decision when the buck stops here. So it is. There's no question about it. We're going to move on to Gerald J. Keene. Jerry Keene was the 13th mayor of the city from 1978 to 1983. And of course, 1978, if you were alive, rings a bell. If you were more than 5 years old. Sometimes people who are 4 remember the snowdrifts. But that's how he started off. And a lot of people still think he caused that blizzard. But anyway,
I did.
Here's Jerry Keene.
Well, I'm delighted to be here and see so many old friends and families in the audience. I see Hank Sennett back there, past president of the Chamber of Commerce, Mark Mercier. All wonderful, wonderful people. Good to see you here. These people don't know what trouble was. I had it from day one. Just, you know, I talk about the blizzard. We had problems before that. About 3 weeks earlier, we had about 12 inches of snow, packed down, heavy snow. Most of the equipment was damaged. And immediately following that, we had about 6 inches of rain and a melting snow. We had flooding on Park Street, Peck Street, everything was underwater. Now here comes February 8th, and we have, I don't know, 35 inches of snow in one day. I went out about 10 o'clock in the morning across South Main Street there, and you knew we were in trouble. There was 6 inches on the ground then. The snowflakes were as big as watermelons. And there's nothing you could do about it. We assembled people together. People came to the office volunteering, and many volunteers out in the audience here tonight helped people during that period of time. But those were really, really tough times. The city shut down for 5 days. Everything was shut down. People had to walk to get a loaf of bread if you could get it. We commandeered oil trucks off of 95 to give people oil. Bread trucks, we took them right off of 95 and brought them in. I remember that we had a call from TI that the lieutenant governor was going to arrive and wanted to talk to me. And he came in, it was, I can't even think of his name now. And he came in anyway, his father was Speaker of the House. Now you know who I'm talking about. And he came in, and I almost threw him out of the second-story window because his father had turned some troops away from Attleboro to New Bedford. They were on the way to Attleboro from the Cape. And his father, who was Speaker of the House, was able to turn them around and go to New Bedford, which had 18 inches. I ran that guy up and down his back, complaining about his father all the time he was there. Well, anyway, the following day, Margaret Heckler was coming in. She was going to land at the John Williams Armory there. So I told Walter Hagney, who was then sergeant of the police department, put some snow back there. Let's look like she can't get out. And she couldn't get out of John Williams' Armory, so we got some help right away. Funny things you have to do to survive, I'm telling you.
Yeah, but it was the good thing too, you had Proposition 2.5.
Well, I'll save that for the next 2 minutes.
All right, Jerry. Thank you, Jerry. All right, we move on now to Brenda Reed, who was the 14th mayor of the city, 1984 to 1985. You've been asked this question so many times, Brenda, but we have to go over it again. What was it like to be the first woman mayor?
Well, actually, it did have its benefits in terms of doing the job as mayor. You were expected to do the job. You were expected to do it perfectly because there was no room for mistakes if you were a woman. But where it really worked to my advantage was the press didn't know how to handle me. Other men didn't know how to handle me. They were afraid if they were too tough, I might cry. And so you work that for a little while. Then after a while, they realized that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and work right along with the rest of them. But I was the only woman mayor in Massachusetts at the time. So the first time I went to my first mayor's meeting, and they have those monthly, and I wanted to go and I wanted to get involved, and there were 38 other mayors there, and they thought that I was the secretary to one of the new mayors. But once they found out I wasn't, it was wonderful working with them because they realized I'd earned my stripes right along with them by being elected. And the election process itself was intriguing and fascinating, and probably, other than being mayor, is the most fun I've had in my whole life. I got to spend lots of time with folks in the community. I campaigned with 4 other candidates, and then ultimately Hank Sennett and I ended up going the distance in the final, and he's here tonight. Stand up, Hank. I wanted to see you. And I'll tell you, to this day, though we're not in contact a lot, we have been in contact, and it was really hard campaigning with him and against him, is what you're supposed to say, I guess, because we both care deeply, as have all of these people when they run for mayor, as does Mayor Robbins now. So, I mean, we all faced certain things when we took office. I was very lucky. The timing was good in that Jerry had paid a dear price when he was in office because of Prop 2.5, because of the blizzard, because of all the things he wanted to do and he couldn't do because there just wasn't money for it. And in the aftermath of Prop 2.5, the city was starting to sort of get its sea legs because Jerry had made that happen. And as a result, I was able to do some things that he wanted to do. So I like to think that maybe there was a partnership that started with him and sort of went on after I got there, but I got to have the fun stuff and he didn't. Sorry.
It's great, isn't it, to be in a discussion and not a debate? I love this. Now, before we introduce the mayor, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that last night she was honored in a very big way by the Attleboro Area Business and Professional Women with the Millennium Women's Award, and I think it was fantastic, and we should all pay homage to you for that. Now, Judith Robbins, who of course we all know from her city council days, became the 16th mayor of the city in 1992. She is still serving today, so we can't, hold her feet to the fire as we will hold most others. But Judith, how are things going right now?
Thank you very much. I did explain to people that it's really not fair to ask me my worst problem. I may not have faced it yet. It's not fair to ask me who I had the most trouble with because I'm still serving with them and I wouldn't dare allow what might happen in the next 6 months. I'm not even sure that I can discuss whether or not I've accomplished my aims because I'm not done. But I really do want to say how much I enjoy being here on this platform with these gentlemen because they have all been a part of my life in politics in Attleboro. Tom Piggott was the mayor who first appointed me to the planning board. And you talk about Brenda being the first woman mayor. There were no women on the boards and commissions in Attleboro at all. And the League of Women Voters went to Tom Piggott and said, you got to start appointing some women. And he said, okay, I can do that. Who? And we said, well, us. And that's sort of the way it started. Women went on the Conservation Commission, as I recall, and the Recreation Commission, and Planning Board, and some of these others.
The charter.
Charter Commission came along at the end of that time, yes. And thank you very much. Then Ray was the first mayor I worked with, and I was on the Charter Commission. He was the mayor that we worked with on the Charter Commission. I was in awe of him. I had never actually served with him on the city council. I didn't have quite the same awe for Jerry Keene because we had served on the council together. But it really, these guys, these guys knew a lot more than I did when I started. So I always sort of looked up to them. It really took Brenda coming along before I felt sort of equal to somebody who was in the mayor's office. I was the city council president. She was the first woman mayor. I was the first woman council president. And the press, they were having a lovely time. They were licking their chops. They knew there'd be a cat fight in City Hall. They knew we couldn't get along. And we actually surprised the hell out of them. I found working with Brenda very pleasant, and we enjoyed it a lot. And then along came Mr. Shang, and for his time, the good times of the Massachusetts Miracle sort of turned bad. And when I first became mayor, my biggest problem was trying to get the city out of debt, which had been done when Jerry was mayor and I was doing it again. But I really have enjoyed all the time of working with all these people and knowing John McIntyre over the years.
Thank you, Mayor Roberts. Just another quick aside to you, when you mentioned Mayor Kay Shang, about, I don't know how many years ago, they all went together now, you understand that. Mayor Shang was in the middle of another dispute of some kind here, and everybody was at his doorstep, and all the television stations and everybody was there. We had a young reporter, and he'd come out here to interview Mayor Shang. So he comes back later and he says to me, he says, that man can really speak good English. With the background he has, it's hard to believe he speaks English as well as he does. And he says, what do you think is the reason for that? I said, well, he learned it playing on the 1944 Attleboro High School championship team. He said, oh, I thought he was here a year or two. I don't know. Let's get back now to Mayor McIntyre. Mayor, we left you there. You prefaced everything for us, you said, when you were first elected. And what about your first challenge when you were elected?
Well, it takes me a little while to get going. And if I get going, you better stop me.
Well, I'll put the brakes on.
1932 was a depression year. And you folks here don't know what the meaning of depression really is. It was really a panic. And people were going one meal a day. They couldn't pay the rent sometimes and went in with their folks or neighbors. Everybody that could planted potatoes or corn or other vegetables. You saw the pictures of the men on the street with apples, selling apples and so forth. That's what it really was in those days. As a result, the Attleboro felt, well, we've got to have some responsible people in our city council so that we won't spend what little money we have left. And so they decided to name 5 prominent citizens, and they were all good. It was George Sweeney, who was a former mayor and owned the Sweeney furniture store. There was Steve Garner, who was part owner of Garner and whatever it is.
Beach Garner.
Yeah, and then there was Joe Rio, who had his own business. There was, and I don't know what was that.
You did all right for me, John, with 4 out of 5, I'll tell you that.
Oh, the biggest fellow of all, Jim Toner. Jim Toner ran the SARS silver stuff. As a result, this group, which they call the Big Five, were elected, and they should have been. They were all good people interested in the city. They didn't pay the councilman anything in those days. They hardly paid the mayor anything either. Any difference. So Russ Brennan was elected also, and there was 5 of us who were not in the big 5. That was Ed Money, George Entwistle, and the other fellow from South Attleboro, I think it was a minute. And then there was Earl Swift from Ward 2. The 5 of them, not Earl. Earl was quite independent, mostly independent of Big 5 White. But they call that the small 5. Well, about the first thing they did, Jim Toner was, among other things, a very capable man with figures. And he drew up a budget, and they decided that the first thing they would do would be to cut the pay of the city employees by 10%.
Ooh.
And
Try that one on the side.
in the circumstances, it wasn't a bad idea, but it didn't go over too well.
Let me hold you right there, Mayor McIntyre. We'll get back and see what happened after that, because I can imagine it was not too happy among the ranks.
Let me finish one more.
All right, go ahead.
Downstairs from the old city hall, which was a wooden building there near the corner of a Railroad Avenue and Park Street, there was a butcher shop called the United Butchers. Well, ever after that, the Big 5 were known as the United Butchers.
By all city employees. All right, let's move back now to Mayor Piggott. Mayor, you've already told us that you certainly did not hit the ground running. I mean, you had to learn from the ground up. But what was the first thing you really wanted to do when you had so many people clamoring for you to get things done and changed?
I want to get my own parking space. I am a student of letters. Most people know this. And I love words. And I've got to leave you with a thought before I ever get out of this auditorium. It's very simply that there's a young reporter, Mark Flanagan, on the Sun Chronicle. And he described Cy's tenure and my tenure with one word that was so beautiful, made me weep. He called our reign tandem. We did together, we came through that period together. He had played his role, I played my role. And I've always been grateful to Mark Flanagan for writing that article, using the word tandem. Now, I had the help of all the people in the city of Attleboro, commencing with the League of Women Voters who had done the ABC study of Attleboro, and they knew what recreation problems lay ahead of us, what school problems lay ahead of us. And so I appointed committees, refreshed the master plan, asked people to serve on the various committees in connection with every phase of town and city government, and they were dynamite. It wasn't me, it was them. The gals all got together, they gave us a new charter. We established a school building commission to build the schools we had to build at that time, and we created the historical commission during that period, and they carried the ball. And all the guys, all the JCs showed up at my house. I said, can you sit on this or that or this or that? Yeah, I'll do that one, I'll do that one, I'll do that one. And they did. We got a new master plan, and then we had a direction. And then I left it and let Jerry and Ray worry about the money.
I told you this would be fun.
And you know what else?
Honestly,
When we were in
Slater.
recession, you've got a lot of people in this audience who were former councilmen with whom I worked. And the things they did for the city, the long deliberations, the hourly meetings, the committee meetings, they were all hard workers and all great guys. And I formed a new kinship and a fraternity. I used the city council as a council. They counseled me on everything I did. And we've got things working rather smoothly. I'm a little burned up with the open meeting law now, because once in a while you can get in the back room and say to a guy, we'll do it this way. It was wonderful. You know, I remember the experience. I didn't mind the word because everybody did it for me. I had a reputation for being a delegator. Delegate. I had a sign on my wall on the study that said, delegate, delegate, delegate. And I did. And when you tap that talent that is in this city, this is why Attleboro is such a wonderful and beautiful community. It's fantastic. And watch out for it, because it'll grow by itself if you don't supervise its growth. You have to be very, very careful. The planning function is immense. I'm watching the land cradle business. We're saving the land. I'm watching industrial development. I'm watching traffic. And you have to be on your guard all the time about your city and what's happening to it. Because I'll tell you, if you get in a helicopter and go upstairs and look down on Attleboro, what you're going to see is all the land is disappearing. And if you go up Route 1 to North Attleboro, where I live now, right over the line, you're bevied with cars. Automobiles. I think it's a place where old automobiles go to die. But at any rate.
You mentioned the master plan. Are we going back, when we talk master plan, are we going back to the Blair, is that the original Blair master plan from the 50s?
Yes.
Or was that something new that came out? You have another master plan?
It's a completely different document.
Yeah.
Well, when did you shelve the Blair plan?
Blair plan was for downtown redevelopment.
Right. But I mean, the Blair plan was spreading through New England. I mean, everybody had a Blair plan in the 50s, right? Everybody, I mean, whoever this Blair was, he did a good job of selling it. He's retired somewhere in Hawaii now.
I was glad to tell you about it. All these people would leave the platform and people go out off the stage. I don't talk to them. The master plan was done by the people of Attleboro.
Okay.
They upgraded the master plan. They did it, and we had a logician, a logistics firm come in and give them the logistics they needed to present a plan that we could follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the people of Attleboro did that, created the master plan, their own master plan. And their charter, North Attleboro right now is fighting over they should have a charter. You bet your life they should have a charter and move on it and do it now. Because ours was 60 years old and needed updating.
And a few closed door meetings too. And a few closed door meetings too.
Yeah.
The mine are open. Right? Where did, you know, you mentioned the Thompson Chemical Company situation. Of course, we all remember that so well. That was such a tragedy down there. But when you came from that and you went into office, again, you gave your background as to who you were before you went into office. How did you feel going into office at that time? You certainly didn't hit the ground running either, right?
No, it's, I would recommend that anybody who ever becomes mayor has Dr. Redden as your secretary. Because,
always good.
and I don't think all these people will say this, but if you didn't have a good secretary, you'd be out selling apples with John here, another big freshman. And I had more or less some common sense, I thought. That's probably one of the things I did that wasn't too bad. And I would get people that I thought would do the job, put the responsibility on them. I'd take the heat if something went wrong, but they were the ones that ran the show, and I didn't tell them what to do in their departments. And I think it created a pretty good way with everybody, because the school committee, everything seemed to fall into place. Everybody was working together, and it was just a good time for communications. And with all of that, it just seemed that in 6 years, in the city of Attleboro, our tax rate went up probably $13, and it was the last 2 years that did it. 1 year, I think, I won't name the incumbent governor, but it was in those years, decided to hold back about $1 million from our cherry sheet, and that kind of did a number on our budget thing. I'll never forget him for that. I don't thank him, but I'll never forget him. And that's the thing. Other than that, the tax rate for the 6 years I was in averaged about $2.50 a year.
Not the same governor who dead-ended Route 95, is it? No? No, okay. Jerry, Proposition 2.5 reared its ugly head. We were talking about that earlier, or mentioned it as it flew by, so I'm sorry. Here we go.
I want to say just a couple of words about the 40 years, the 40 days when I started. the days of bad weather and the blizzard. It was commonly known back then that it was Ray's revenge.
I still got the doll.
But anyway, Proposition 2.5 was a law that I'll never forget. Let's go back a little bit. My first year as mayor, we reduced taxes by 15 cents, and I was very proud of that. The next year, the governor and the legislature decided to have a 4% cap on our budget. We can only increase our budget by 4%. The next year, they put a 0 cap on it, which means no increase in your budget. And then Proposition 2.5 came in. And the city of Attleboro found itself having to reduce its levy by 15% for 3 years in a row. That's something I hope to never have to happen to another mayor. We had conditions which were unbearable. First of all, the city at that time had nothing going for it. We were working with manual typewriters. All the equipment in City Hall was obsolete. People were working on desks that we got from the civil defense. Everything was in such poor shape that we needed a boost, not somebody to take it away from us. It was terrible. I remember buying Dodge Dots for the police department. Dodge Dots. 4-cylinder Dodge Dot. And within the first year, we had 13 officers retire because of back injury. Matt, you remember that? I remember one Halloween. I used to go and ride with them on Halloween. We were running down Oak Hill Avenue to an event, and we couldn't go over 35 miles an hour in this cruiser. They're terrible. We found ourselves with snow and no gasoline for the trucks. I'm not going to tell you how we got it, but we got gasoline. It was a terrible, terrible situation. We got through it, and some of the things we had to do then, many of the things we had to do then, are benefiting Hugh Ramos today and Brenda Rita back then. Some of the things we had to put in was the enterprise system for sewer, water, and rubbish, to take them off the tax rate and make the bills go out separately. We had to do that. We were even considering street lighting, having people pay for their own street lights. Imagine what would happen to me then. The conditions were unbearable for that period of time. But it was a lovely, good job. I love to go to work in the morning. The mayor's job is the best job, and I know all of us will say that. Even during those very bad periods of time, it was a good job, and I loved it.
All right, Jerry, just for a second, can everybody at the rear of the hall hear? The speakers okay? Raise your hands if you can hear okay. All right, good. Just try and speak into the microphone as much as you can, please, so we don't want anybody to miss. Some of these exchanges are pretty good. Brenda, getting back to you, I'm sorry.
I've never heard that former politicians had any trouble being heard, so everybody raised their hand.
I would think so. Let's get back to you. What I'd like to know is what was the very first thing you had to attend to? I mean, other than being a woman in office.
That was nothing compared to the first thing, and the first thing actually builds on some very hard work that Jerry and other mayors had done. And for years and years, as many of you know, there had been talk about Attleboro needing and wanting its own home, its own government center, and a decent police station, because in both cases, the city hall at that time was actually rented space on the second and third floor over a bank downtown, and the police station was just dreadful. Jerry worked long and hard, not that other mayors didn't, but Jerry had the intestinal fortitude to push forward, develop plans for a government center and an updated police department, and looked at buying the existing Elks building so that we could, as a community, have our first home ever in all the years of our government. At a time when money was really tight and Prop 2.5 was still in the stranglehold on the city, he still moved forward with that. When I came along, as I said earlier, it was the aftermath of 2.5, and things were starting to level out, so there were some things that you needed to deal with. Jared made the decision not to run for re-election and to do other things, but what he wanted to do was make sure bids went out and got opened on the new government center, and that there was money in place to build a new government center before he left. The council cooperated. He had scaled back the size of the building several times to fit the budget, Bids were opened, and lo and behold, the bids came in higher than the money that was there, though at the time, no one had no way of knowing that. We assumed there would be enough money. Those bids were opened on his last day in office. The next day, I walked through those doors into the mayor's office, and I'll tell you, honestly, figuratively, physically, you feel like the weight of the world has landed on your shoulders when you walk through that door, and it's like, oh my God, what do we do now? But the first decision had to be, and there was a challenge to the bids by one of the bidders. The decision had to be, do we throw the bids out? Do we keep them and risk the challenge that will go to Labor and Industries in Boston? What do? We don't want to drag this out anymore. The decision was made early on, and let me say the department heads that had worked for Jerry Keene stayed on and worked for me. They're an extraordinary group of people. You speak about secretaries, administrative assistants, Hope Clark is right there. She's the one who kept telling me, yes. Who fed me coffee and told me not to be so gullible and to shape up on a bad day. Any of you who work with Hope know that that's how she works. We met with the appropriate department heads. We made the decision. We had no choice but to throw the bids out, to modify once again ever so slightly the government center, and to go back out to bid as soon as we could. Working as a team, we did that. We worked with the council. The council cooperated under the leadership of President Robbins at that time, and Hank Sennett and so many others who were there. In April of that same year, we were in the ground. We weren't physically in the ground, the shovels were in the ground, and we were breaking ground for Government Center. And about a year and a half later, I guess, Jerry Keene and I stood in front of that building, had our picture taken together. It was October 1985. We came in on time and under budget. And that was the first challenge, and one of which I'm most proud. Don Smith, who helped put this together tonight, was the city planner at the time and was de facto clerk of the works, even though we hired somebody to do that. Donald was the one who made sure all this stuff happened. And I thank him, I thank the council and the citizens for going along with it, but especially I thank Jerry Keene tonight publicly and proudly for doing all of that work in a difficult time and giving them a home and giving us a home we can be proud of. Thanks, Jerry. And then they made me move out 2 months later. Go figure.
Up to that point, it was a mutual admiration society. Mayor Robbins, I can just see you sitting over there and saying to yourself, boy, the things I could say, but we know you're walking a fine line here, and I understand that. But go back to when you first went into office as mayor, and you had been on the city council and served in so many roles. Is that good or is that bad? I mean, some of it has to be good, but then on other points, somebody had to be saying, oh, what is she doing, mayor, right?
Well, I do remember when my very good friend Bob Travers, who's sitting right in the front row, said, you know what, she's going to try to run us from the corner office. And every once in a while, you know, you'd hear my steps coming down the stairs, and Bob would go, oh my God, here she comes. I tried very hard not to try to run the council. Unfortunately, they didn't try nearly as hard not to try to run me. But we're working it out. That's our form of government. I think the thing, when I started looking back at the start of my time in office, it's like a feeling of deja vu. Here's John McIntyre talking about money problems and Jerry Keene talking about money problems. The biggest problem when I first became mayor was the fact that the city had gone within a period of just a couple of years from having a $2 or $3 million surplus in reserve to having $1 million deficit. The state's economy had gone bad, people were not paying their taxes, and of course, not only were we not getting property taxes in, but the state wasn't getting its taxes, so they cut state aid to the cities and towns, which meant that we didn't get as much money from the state either. They gave us a right to defer our teachers' salaries. So not only did I come in facing a $1 million deficit, but there was $1 million that Kay Shank had deferred the last year he was mayor. There was another $1 million that I deferred the first year I was mayor. And so we had to dig ourselves out of a pretty big hole. We had to settle contracts, which was hard to do at that point. We had to get our employees back to being paid full time because Kay had done sort of the same thing John talks about. The last budget that he did, he'd actually required each department to cut its salary budget by 5%, and they did that by giving people unpaid days off. So we really had to struggle with the budget. Fortunately, I had some marvelous people helping me. Phil Lemnios, who was Kay Shang's mayor's assistant, and who's now the town manager up in Hull and doing a great job, stayed on, worked with me, stayed on for 2 or 3 years. His experience was just very valuable to me. But for me, it was tremendously lucky that I had been a city councilor and that I sort of knew the ins and outs of city government, because I didn't have time to learn the job before we were really faced with having to deal with financial problems.
Thank you, Mayor. Go back to Mayor McIntyre now. Mayor McIntyre, you were mentioning, of course, that what you had there in that city council and how you started. Can you go back and tell us what you think was the biggest accomplishment in the time you were mayor in such a trying period that you were there?
Yeah.
Yes?
That was until 1938.
Well,
I was until 39 that was.
okay.
But I do want to say that my memory fluctuated a little bit. And the fifth member of the Big Five was Tom Sadler, South Attleboro.
That's the one with us.
He was a good friend of mine too. And he was on our famous commission for sports. I'm not going to take up any more time because I go on forever. There's so many things I can remember.
What is the one thing you remember, though, Mayor McIntyre, about the time you served as mayor that you felt was a real good accomplishment for the city?
I don't think I can get into that, but I say in 1938, there were two things. One, I was elected mayor, and the second thing is on June 18th, I married
Honey McBride.
Oh,
Margaret
I
McBride.
have the name. All right.
And she, and I will attest, and so will her 8 children, that was a heck of a lot more than anything that happened as mayor.
My wife is not here, Mayor, but she loves you.
I do say in this age where that I bragged a little bit, maybe not justifiably, that we left the city with no bonded indebtedness. Hard to really encompass that in your mind, but that is so.
I hope to tell you.
We built the school over on Watson Avenue. Where's it now? Yeah.
Willett School.
$225,000, including the land. About 20 years later, they did some work on it again, bring it up to date, over $6 million. So it was a different time. The mayor and my day, I don't know, we got $3,000 a year or $5,000. No expenses. We didn't care much about that. There were, as the other man said, a wonderful group of people to work with, and it was a good experience. And I don't think I'd try it again.
Thank you, Mayor. Been there, done that. All right. Let's move on to Tom Pickett again. Mayor, the accomplishment. What do you come away with when you think about those
Pocket
things?
space right next to
Did
that.
you have a security guard to watch over it for you?
I had the guidance of the League of Women Voters. I know what the education picture was. It was bleak even in those days. We needed an extension on the high school, we got it. We
Push the mic over more towards you.
We needed an extension on the high school, we got it. We had needed 2 extensions, one on Peter Thatcher, one on Coelho, and we got that. And then I had the pleasure of purchasing the lots of land that became Hill Roberts School and Hyman Fine School. And then Ray took it from there, took the ball from there. The schools, you know, I haven't even mentioned revenue sharing. The years of revenue sharing, when I was back and forth to Washington and Boston to procure federal funds, because they were sharing some of the money, and I was competing with all the other mayors for the monies that were distributed through the federal revenue sharing. I brought money back out for the water towers and the schools and for all the sewer things. I filed the first application in the city of Attleboro for an extension to the sewerage plant because we were overloaded. Thank God we got it now. Now I look down the pike and I see Judy's down there and she's done all the things she had to do to get the water to the people and to get pure water to the people, mandated by the federal government. They used to tell us what to do and what we had to spend. And I'll tell you, accomplishments, well, the car's okay. I'll take the parking space. Those were, I think, the high points. There were so many other things. I got the McNamara report we built the police department at the time, and that was a document you should read if you get an opportunity, and restructuring the entire police department, then getting into trouble with the reporters, because when I said I was going to reinforce the police department, they printed that I was going to restructure it. And all hell broke loose. I had to go down to the police station and explain to the police officers actually what I was trying to do. And trying to get them equipment and procedures were all reviewed and that type of thing. I want to just say, and I'm going to sneak this in, this man talked about his bride. I've got one out in the audience, a beauty. And this woman, we've been together over 50 years. And raised our kids and all our grandchildren. And she's still teaching right into school sometimes. She'll substitute, teach music. And she's a good cook, too.
Katie, where are you? Stand up, where are you? Katie, stand up. Get the hot meal tomorrow. Ray, can you remember the first challenge you had? The very first challenge when you went in there and like Brenda said, wow, here I am.
Well, I think one of the challenges I had was the charter at that time made me a member of the school committee. And I have to be honest with you, at the beginning I was not in favor of it. I didn't think it was a good idea. But I knew it was the will of the people. It was on the charter, and I went in with the school committee. And we had a very good rapport. I think that they treated me more than well. Previously, the 3 years before I went on the school committee, they were increasing their budget by 20% each year. That year, it was a miracle. And it was because of them, not just because of me. It was only 5% increase that year. That was a challenge that we took on, and I think we respected one another. We could talk back and forth and get things done that we wanted to do without getting into any lawsuits or going to court, and there's no need of that. Let's try to settle these things and get things done. But, you know, the other challenges are even before that, even before Jerry took over the part with the new police station and the new city hall. We had done some of the work on that to get the land available for it. There's all things, they go from one mayor to another. You can see where things go from Tom to myself to Jerry to Brenda, right down the line. We all are involved in some parts of the city, even though at that time you're not in the office. And I think that's a challenge in itself. But you have to get all those things done, and I think everything has worked well with the city, and I just hope it continues that way.
Well, as Mayor Robbins said, it's always what you can do with what you have. There's no question about it. And even in this day and age, when we talk bonded indebtedness, the money that is on hand to spend is just absolutely incredible when you put it
I also want to tell Tom I got rid of that parking spot. I went and parked with the people.
He said to me, he passed me one day in the street, he said, you put me on the school committee. He was already working 23 hours a day.
Well, he had an hour available.
Yeah.
Go to school committee.
And I also have a wife in the audience, she'll kill me for today. We've been married 51 years, I don't think she'll leave me now.
No.
Pauline, would you please stand up?
All right, Jerry, I hit you with 2.5 before you were locked in with a blizzard and a few other things along the way. We were able to get some things done, as Brenda mentioned, and carryovers. It's always been an issue, though, of the dollar bill. I mean, it's very easy to say the buck stops here, but whether it's revenue sharing or 2.5, or, I mean, you're always out there bleeding and pleading for $1, right? Because if you want to put your ideas through in the time you're there, it has to be done with dollar bill.
That's right, Wally. Everything is money.
Turn your mic a little bit, Jerry, so we can hear you a little better.
I want to say a few things about town's parking space. He had the first space on the corner of Railroad Avenue facing Park Street. At that time, the traffic went the other way. And I remember I was chairman of United Way for the South Attleboro area and serving on the city council. And I knew he was in Fairfield, Connecticut, looking at Handy and Harmon, which wanted to come to Attleboro. And I had this bundle of money that I had to deliver to the 4th floor to the Shawmut building. And I said, well, I know he's away, I'm gonna park in this parking place. Only gonna be a minute. Took the bag of money, went up to the 4th floor, made my report to the United Way people, came down, and there was a cruiser in the middle of Park Street, one on Railroad Avenue, 14 police officers there, and he's pointing at that car. Give him a ticket! Give him a ticket! He gave me a ticket, I turned around, went back down to the police station and gave it to Russ Dugas. Anyway, some of the accomplishments, some of the things I remember is the beginning of a bus line for Attleboro. And I remember the first day we started, we were working with Harry Bagamian. And he had an old bus, we had to push it every morning to get it going. And we started this bus line from Attleboro to South Attleboro. And now you see this bus line in 14 or 15 or 17 communities throughout the region. It's just a wonderful thing that people can get on a bus, they're not locked into their homes, they can move around the city of Attleboro, and that was a good accomplishment. Of course, we had to get grants to do that, and that was part of the issue of money again. I remember that we had a problem with water, too much of it, and getting rid of it, getting it to the people. We had a drought so bad one time that on a Friday afternoon, we were down as low as 11 feet in the standpipe. That's very little water for the city. We had people in Ward 4 without any water. And so I got all industry together in the Chamber of Commerce, and I asked them to do something to help us. They were using the water. It was proven that TI was using 3 million gallons a day. We were pumping on the average of over 7 million gallons a day. Today, they're not even pumping that. But because of that, industry recycled, they put in their own wells, and were able to save the city by imposing this curfew on industry. I remember shutting down industry 4 days a week, where they couldn't work on Friday. So we would have enough time over the weekend to recover. From Monday morning, we'd have half the standpipe full. So that was a good accomplishment that helps today. They're not pumping that great amount of water. We're able to shut down the Bungie Street well, and people in Ward 3 remember that when they used to have water to cover chocolate.
Yes.
They couldn't wash anything.
Yes.
Well, that well was shut down. And that was a good accomplishment.
Yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, we had the first and only urban renewal project in the city of Attleboro, taken a lot of houses, there were drug-infested houses on Pine Street, Park Street, across from where London's used to be, and London's store, the new store was put up there. That was all urban renewal project, UDAG, and federal and state money. And that today is returning money to community development through the UDAG grant that you have to pay back. Ray started the sewer project, it really began planning in Tom's time. Ray started the new sewer treatment plant on Pond Street, and I was able to complete it and bring sewerage, very badly needed sewerage, to South Attleboro. And that's some of the accomplishments.
Very good, Jerry, thank you. Brenda, when we talk accomplishments, of course, when I listen to you as being the first woman mayor, and I go back to this again, I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself as far as I'm concerned, because I know about the Old Boys Network. But crashing into that as you did you have, was there any kind of a feeling you had that maybe just because you were a woman, things were not going to happen? Was there, I mean, you said your secretary buoyed you up every day and she kept you going, but did you really have a feeling that there was a backlash of some kind just because you were a woman?
No, I wondered about that when I was elected, because it was the sort of thing that hadn't been tested in a community that was still a very traditional community by Massachusetts standards, one of the last traditional bastions in Massachusetts. But I found out very quickly that, as the other mayors did, that folks in the community wanted things to happen. In some cases they wanted change, in other cases they just wanted hope, and they wanted a good future for themselves and their children. And while I can talk about the aftermath of the sewage treatment plant and EPA coming in and giving Jerry a very bad time about reimbursing monies that were due the city for having constructed this plant. I mean, we went and we fought the EPA, I and the attorneys, once I was in office, we got that money for the city, and we also got legal fees reimbursed. So in the final analysis, we were able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars that would have been paid out needlessly, quite frankly, because the city deserved that money. Yet by some bureaucratic issue out there, the federal government wanted to renege. But 2 days before I took office, Frosty the polar bear died. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Frosty, it might not seem like a big deal, but Frosty'd been around, I think, for 30 years, and he was the beloved polar bear in Capron Park. And I wanted to replace Frosty. Someone offered to donate a polar bear, and I thought, oh, this would be wonderful. Well, we peeled back the surface of the idea and found out that in order to do that in 1984, you had to live by new rules, that you couldn't do things in that zoo that had been done when it was first established many, many years before that. So we took a look at that project and decided we wanted to upgrade the park, upgrade the zoo. We got the community involved, the council, the park commission, and the federal government. And by the time I left office, we had been able to secure a very hefty federal grant. And folks agreed to come together and do a major fundraising effort in the community, and the council, under President Robbins' leadership at that time, agreed to fund the additional money necessary to do the upgrade that you see in the park today. So while we worked on some things that were critical on a day-to-day and kept the flow going, as the other mayors have talked about, I'll tell you, something that started with the polar bear's untimely death ended up being something that I think is really neat in this community now, and that park is also an educational opportunity for every child passing through there, and I think that's a really good thing. So in addition to the other things, that one makes me feel particularly good. And then the thing that scared me the most when I took office was during the campaign, when there were 5 of us campaigning in the early days, because Prop 2.5 had done such tremendous damage in the city. There was a pesky deficit of about $600,000. Jerry had gotten it down to that from numbers that were outrageous because of what he had to do just to survive. But that last number didn't seem to want to go anywhere, and my opponents had said it would take 3 to 5 years and they try to get it down, and I said 6 months it'll be gone. And the press didn't say I was crazy, but they wanted to. I was a woman, they didn't know how to handle me, so they didn't want to say I was crazy, I might cry. That goes back to the earlier comment. I didn't really say that, but anyway, at that time I really believed that if we all worked together, all pulled together, and everybody got involved, we could do that. We could once and for all eliminate it. In 6 months, we had a $76,000 surplus. In 2 years, we had a $3 million surplus. And that didn't happen because I was sitting in that chair in that office. It happened because good people had been elected to public positions in Attleboro, and the good citizens of the community went along with the kinds of things we said we needed to do to make that happen, and department heads tightened their belts, and the school department cooperated with the city departments. That was very exciting, and That is something that carried over after that, but it's also cyclical because you hear Mayor Robbins talking about the peaks and valleys and the things that she faced when she came into office, and I've heard that from mayors who came before me. So it's the sort of thing that's never going to go away. I guess it's like old gum on your shoe. It's just kind of there. Anyway, terrible analogy, but felt like that. So
No, good analogy, good analogy. For those, just perchance who may not have been here in 1984, when we speak of Frosty, Frosty the polar bear at Capron Park was more popular, and we will all agree on that, than all of us put together. So if you don't think that was a challenge, you can think again. Frosty was king in his city in that period of time. Now, Mayor Robbins, what can you tell us, without me leading you into it, that won't get you in trouble here tonight? Your accomplishments early on, I think, stand for themselves, and I think those are things you should discuss in your first term.
Well, first of all, I have my own parking space story, which is a bullet that I dodged very fortunately. We were in the new city hall, and Mr. Shang had quite often walked or been driven by his friends. He didn't worry a lot about a parking place. But my husband was concerned. Yes, I've got the same old husband that I've had for 39 years. And he's out riding his bicycle tonight, as those who know him well would be not surprised to hear. But anyway, he said that he really didn't like the idea of me walking all the way down to the end of the parking lot late at night. So I said to the DPW, will you guys please, mark out a parking space closer up to the city hall back door for the mayor? And they said, fine. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from Doug Semple saying, Judy, you've just blown it. The closest space to the back door, the one that all the people want to park in, is now marked mayor's parking space. You cannot do this. And I went out, and instead of putting me over next to the police station where I had expected to be, where they had parking for city vehicles and I wanted to be the closest city vehicle, they had put me over where the visitor parking was, and they had truly blocked off the best space. We changed that before the day was over, and I always figured that I dodged what would probably have been some very bad publicity. And I still have the parking place. It's actually moved a little further down the way since the handicap parking is a little closer. But probably the thing that I remember and that I'm tremendously proud of that doesn't really show is the negotiations that we had to do to get to build this water plant that we were ordered to build by the federal government. When I first came into office, we were in a very peculiar position, and Mayor Shang had struggled with this, of having been ordered by the federal government to build a water treatment plant and not allowed by the state government to build a water treatment plant. The state wouldn't give us the permits. They wouldn't give us the deep water intake we needed. They wouldn't let us dredge Orr's Pond. And yet the federal government kept saying that they were going to begin to fine us if we didn't get going on this project. I went into Boston one day with some folks to speak in favor of Techner Apex, who were having some trouble with the Department of Environmental Protection, and we went in to be supportive. And after the meeting was over, I'm standing around talking to people who just happened to be there. And I said to the guy who was next to me, who I didn't really know, he was new, he'd just been appointed his position. I said, boy, I really don't like the Department of Environmental Protection. They're making life really tough for Attleboro. They won't give us the permits to do what we've been ordered to do. And he said, well, it's very interesting. I've just been made the chairman of that, the director of that district. I think we ought to be able to work this out. Let's make it work. For the next year, every time our people who got together to negotiate ran into problems, when our consultants wouldn't do something or their permit people wouldn't do something, I would call George, and George and I would figure out what ought to be done, and then we'd go back and tell our people what had to be done. It took a whole year, but that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, that we managed to get through that permitting process and be able to build that water treatment plant that's been so good for the city of Attleboro.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Now let's just open it up here now for the few short minutes we have left for somebody who may have something else to say. Very smiles at me immediately. There are other things that get you to There are other things that you may want to mention among yourselves that we always think about electing somebody to office. And the one thing I think is you stand in that booth all the time, you always think, I really am not really pushed so much by party politics, but Lord, I'd like to have somebody in a common sense party who is up there doing this job for me. And I think when you get into office, you try to surround yourself with people just like that. Is that the case with most of you? Were you searching for somebody who not just had experience, but had good old-fashioned common sense? Right?
Well, I pretty much agree with you on that. Out of the Emergency Act, the Employment Act that came out at that time when I was in, I was able to get a person like Larry, Murphy, Larry Murphy. You'll have to remember, I'm back there a long time too, folks. And he was put, I guess you'd call him the first planter that Attleboro had, and he was put in there, paid by the government, and he did a great job in the city. He had common sense. He was on the phone a lot and trying to get different grants and things that keep the city going without trying to dip into our funds. And he did such an excellent job. The only thing I told him was he was on the phone so much that I was going to get him a couple of cans and a tight string if he kept it up, because the bills were building up on the telephone. But people like Merv Cronin came in as an auditor, not because the council put him in. He was the council's choice, and certainly mine, but the other ones that the auditor is for the council, not for the mayor. But he served the mayor as well as the council, and I think adequately. I think they did a good job trying to get the things in order. Richard Arruda, who was the person in the assessor's office, I think he turned that around a little bit. He kind of gave us a better tax base to start with, and all things like that. They were all people that were pretty much common sense wise, and like I say, you put someone in, you expect them to do the job, you don't tell them how to do it, and get it done. And these are the things that happen as you go along. And it comes to fruition after a while. I think it's well
After a period of time, right. Jerry, you couldn't put common sense on Beacon Hill, so is that what you try to do locally?
I guess that's probably what I really tried to do, but Ray is right. You have to pick people who have your own philosophy and they can reflect what you really want to do in the city. And I think that's what most of the mayors and I tried to do during a period of time. There were some people that were always at friction with you, and they had to go. I think I got rid of the public works director within weeks of the time I was there, because there was conflict there. So you try to work with people that are agreeable and work with you. I do want to introduce someone I've worked with all my life, my childhood sweetheart, my wife Dot.
We're at 50 years. You want to stand up for us, huh? Come on. Tom, let's get back to you for a second. How about common sense? You go in there and you're trying to put something together, and you had to be in a situation of saying, wow, what do we do now? It's a great idea for me to be mayor, but you had to be looking for people with common sense.
Well, I don't want to wax philosophical, but if a guy is straight, he's straight.
Can't hear you.
He's raised as a child to have a morality.
A little bit towards the grip.
The child, a boy or a girl, they're raised to have a basis of morality. You'll run into honest people when they're adults. I tried to surround myself with people who were straight to me, tell me the truth. I don't want any stories. And I tried to do things in accordance with the Boy Scout oath, believe it or not.
And I want to talk quickly about a relationship with the council. I love the council. I worked with all the councils. And in one of the instances, there was a problem I had. A lady called me. She said she had some water for sale. Hey, it was $10,000. I called Ray Macumber on the phone at home and said, Ray, he was the chairman of the water committee. I said, get me $10,000. He said, what? I want $10,000 to buy that water that lady wants to sell me. She gave the land to her town, Crockett Pond. which we bought the water. And I said to Sullivan one day, you know what you ought to do? You ought to tap into that water up at Crockett Pond. And he said, we've been using it all along. But this was Ray and I working together, and he did what I wanted him to do. And I could talk to any of the councilmen in that fashion, you know. Reed Lee Forger would slam his hat down, come into my office and say, you know, we got to pay some bills here. There are some bills here. These people are complaining. They haven't been paid. I didn't know it. But Lee was conscientious. He was a good finance committee man. And Jerry, of course, he got all his training on the finance committee. How long did you serve on that?
On the finance committee?
Yeah.
4 years, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's an exercise in itself. So, what was the question?
I'm almost as old as you are. You can't come back to me like that.
You know, look,
common sense. You surround yourself with people with common sense.
Common sense,
Right.
absolutely. On the boards, commissions, trusts, the planning board, the gals from on the master plan, and I wrote something down here. Oh, by the way, I'm going to leave you with a corker tonight.
Stay close to the mic, Tom.
All right. Fluoridation. Fluoridation. Guess who fluorided Attleboro's water? That little old winemaker me. And I'm going to tell you, I go to the doctor, I go to the dentist, I go to them all through the city, and they say, Tom, the dramatic decrease in cavities in teeth for young people is dramatic. It's a 40, 50, 60% less kids. And how did we fluoridate it? The health department said they were going to fluoridate it. The people complained, some of them. So I ran a little contest. I asked the editor of the paper, get the results and tell me what the results are. Who's for and who's against? And when I got the results, it turned out to be 44 to 44. And I said to the health department, fluoridate the water. Well, now I hope I don't regret it. My grandchildren have been lived and raised in this city, and that fluoride has helped a lot of our kids. So that was a result of arbitrary decisions.
How sure of yourself were you? Did you drop your dental insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. well, and if they do see we're living over the line in North Attleboro now. Small house, manageable. And I'm interested in everything that goes on in the city of Attleboro. And dentist bills, I go to the dentist very regularly. You know what I mean? I want my own teeth. I get out of a fight, I want to bite you. So, my kids have it. And that's all I care about with my kids.
Mayor Robbins, there's one problem you don't have, fluoridation of the water.
We put that one.
Others do, but you, yeah, right, for sure. Well, I certainly have enjoyed being here with you. I hope you have too. It's just been wonderful because I knew if we got you all to open up, there'd be a discussion and you'd be supportive of one another. To say it's cyclical, it's true. It passes on from one to the next, and you do the job as best you can with what you have to work with. And I think that goes all the way back to Mayor McIntyre in a time when there was nothing here at all for anybody, and hoping that you could get help from the federal government in some way or form or fashion. And here we are still talking about revenue sharing later on, going to the government, the state still telling you what to do. The federal government says yes, the state says no. The things in the background people are not aware of that you have to fight all the time. I want to thank you all, Mayor McIntyre, Mayor Piggott, Mayor Macumber, Mayor Keene, Mayor Reed, Mayor Robbins. I think you were just wonderful, far more than I ever expected for you to open up and tell us the history of Attleboro the way you lived it and saw it. Thank you very much.
This has more than met what our expectations were. We had put up 100 chairs and added more, so there's at least 100 people here tonight. I think that says something wonderful about this community. We would like to just take a few minutes. I have to do this. My mother's 86. She's been a Yankee fan all her life. So I'm sort of bad in cleanup, but you got a couple more people coming up. We're going to practice the 7th inning stretch right now. So what I'd like to do is ask all the current office holders and department heads to please stand. I think a lot of them already are in the back. We could let them photograph them. If you could just stay standing, I would like all the former office holders, department heads, or people who've worked for the city to please stand. And if you could also stay standing a minute, as I look at this crowd, I would like all of you who have ever volunteered for an effort for this city or lived with someone who has spent their life dedicated to this city to please stand. And I don't think anyone's going to be sitting. So I would like you all to stand up and say thank you to every single one of you. Okay, the 7th inning stretch is over. A few announcements that we would like to make is that we do have a guest book and it allows for comments. And this is actually the 2nd community meeting we've held. Jerry Keene helped Sue and I organize one a year ago in which we just tried to think of all the different areas of Attleboro's history. This came up as one that we have documents for, but we wanted to get some more information on. We videotaped this evening. We'd like to let you know that we're working with a high school class to do interviews of people who knew Francis O'Neill, there still are some folks around, Cy Brennan, for whom this school has been named for, and also Kay Shang. So Diane Spatcher and Marianne McAllister from the high school have a whole list of names that we pulled off of the photographs at City Hall and in talking with folks. And I hope that if you get a call that you're willing to be part of an interview for a video that Walter Bischoff is helping us put together so that we've got everybody from John McIntyre on a video. Some other announcements we'd like to make is that if any of you are interested in being part of our oral history aspect of the project, we have a sign-up sheet and we'd be more than happy to have you sign that, and we will eventually get to all of those that do agree to be part of this. This here project is part of a grant. There's a little bit of an explanation in your program, but we were very fortunate to be in the first round of grants, right? From the Massachusetts Historic Records Advisory Board. And we are very honored tonight to have Jack Warner, who is the state archivist with us tonight, who is going to help us do a presentation and say a few words. That grant, money came through the federal government for. That funding source is kind of drying up. And we know we're not done. We've got a long way to go in terms of finding Attleboro's records, documenting what we do have, what we don't have, and then preserving them. So we're planning to apply for more monies. And as part of that, we are going to ask you to help us. We have some people going around who have letters for Representative Lepper and Cheryl Jake that they are going to pass around. We ask if you are supportive of our efforts in preserving Attleboro's history that you sign those letters. We will mail them for you. Or if you're very good at writing letters, you can take them home and reword them and mail them in yourselves. But there are some people going around now who are going to pass those out. Without these kind of funds, there's no way tonight would have happened. There's no way all the efforts that all of the advisory board has been involved with over the last year would happen. The strategic plan draft is in my office. I promised Bill Carroll, our consultant, I would read it after tonight. We're actually probably looking at some major grants that we're going to be applying for in the next year or so, because Attleboro's historic records are not in the greatest shape. It's hard enough to find the money to do all the things that these people are trying to do, but we don't want to lose that. And we felt this year is an excellent year to make that effort. So in saying that, I would like to take this opportunity to have Jack Warner, our state archivist, just come up and say a few words, and then we have a little presentation for our mayors. All of you who are either current or former office holders, after Jack, Sue is going to do a very heartfelt presentation from the advisory board that will be quick. We'd like you to come up so that we can do a photograph of all of the office holders, past and present. So before you hit the refreshments table, if you would just do that. Jack?
Thank you very much, Joan. I am Jack Warner. I'm the State Archivist. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here this evening representing Secretary of State Bill Galvin. And Joan did mention that we are at least slightly partially responsible for supporting this effort. And I would like to consider myself a friend of Attleboro history, even though I am a kind of a carpetbagger, as it were. It's been from Norwood. It's been very interesting for me to be here this evening because you have 29 years of combined service, but also 60 years of Attleboro history sitting up here on the stage, dating back from the second administration of Franklin Roosevelt up to the present administration, which is just about out the door. So I'd like to say how much it means for me to be here, and also to extend these certificates of appreciation to the members of the distinguished members of the panel here, and also to Walter Cryan. Briefly, Walter Cryan, my family bought a house in Nantucket in 1964, and you still look the same as you did on that black and white television. So these are the wording of these is the same, except of course to the individuals who are to receive them. These are stamped with the seal of the City of Attleboro, Massachusetts, which dates back to 1694. Certificate of appreciation presented to John W. McIntyre for his years of service as the 8th Mayor of the City of Attleboro, 1939 to 1944, and for his contributions in documenting the history of the City of Attleboro during the Mayor's Forum, October 26, 2000, signed by Susan D. Flood, Joan F. Pilkington-Smith, and Carolyn Adams. We have one of these for everybody, as well as suitable gifts. I will pass these out. And then I think, in closing, it may not be closing, but I think it would be appropriate, because the theme of this forum has been about public service, that we should pledge allegiance to the flag. So hang on one second. We could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
So, one more. Jerry, has a few words.
I promise I'll be brief. Okay? Yeah, sit down. It's not that brief, Jerry, you know. I'd just like to once again say thank you to Mayor Robbins and former Mayors McIntyre, Pickett, Macomba, T, and Reed, who the last two I happened to work for a period of time. And also to Walter Cryan for participating in this forum this evening. This is one of a few community meetings that the Fair Millennium Friends of Attleboro History Group will be having this year in conjunction with our grant activities. And I want to especially thank all you for being here this evening, because we can only be successful in our endeavors by having people like yourselves take an interest and support our efforts in preserving our history for future generations. And I think this is really exciting tonight, because this is actually history in the making. So hold on to those programs that you have tonight, because they're going to be important. Because in 50 to 100 years, future generations are going to read that it was in the year 2000 that the state of Massachusetts, mindful of its own rich heritage, began a grant program to assist the individual cities and towns to document their own histories. And then they'll read that it was in the year 2000 that there were people who really cared about the history of our city. And the entire Attleboro community came together, local government, civic organizations, the business communities, and individuals at large, to document and preserve Attleboro's past history and ensure that the events and happenings of today and into the future will be documented and preserved as well. So when you greet one another during the reception, which will just be in another minute, say howdy, partner, to each other, because we are all partners here tonight. Partners in honoring these mayors and past and present public servants here tonight for their years of service to the city and making Attleboro a great place to live and raise a family. Partners in ensuring that people born here will be able to trace their family lineage. Partners in making sure future residents are aware of the business and industries that set the standard for the economic development we have enjoyed over the years. Partners in making sure people won't forget the churches and community leaders of years ago who were responsible for giving us a strong moral and spiritual foundation on which to grow. And we are partners in helping future generations to understand and value their rich heritage. And we should be proud of that. So again, thank you for being here this evening, and enjoy the refreshments and especially the great company that's here tonight. Thanks again.